Good evening. Happy Earth Day. Welcome to the Read Magazine presents poetry reading for the 2021 San Jose State University Legacy of Poetry Festival. I'm Helen Meservey, faculty advisor and editor of Read Magazine, California's oldest literary journal. Read started on the site of the San Jose State University campus in 1867 and is now, in April 2021, going to press with issue 154. In less than 6 weeks' time, on June 1st, we'll be opening submissions for issue 155, so get that date on your calendar. Go to our website, readmag.org, for submissions guidelines, and we'll put that URL in the chat for you. Our event tonight features past, present, and future Read poetry editors and those whose work has appeared in Read publications. We'll hear some extended segments by the distinguished poets Danusha Lamaris and Rodrigo Toscano, and we'll open the event with a few short selections by Umi Ali, Vinny Lopez, and Megan Alfaro. But I have 2 points to note before we start. I want to invite you to join the final Legacy of Poetry Festival event tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Zoom in for a YouTube of performance poetry videos by poets from San Jose State University and the wider San Jose literary community. You still have time to upload your own video to that YouTube channel to be considered for the Best Poetry Video Award. We'll put that URL in the chat for you too. Secondly, I have the privilege of thanking the sponsors who have joined Read Magazine in producing this year's Legacy of Poetry Festival, including the Poets and Writers Coalition, the Creative Writing Program at San Jose State University, and Poetry Center San Jose through grants from Poets and Writers, Inc. The festival's principal sponsors include San Jose State University Associated Students, the Department of English and Comparative Literature, and the School of Journalism and Mass Communications, and also the Diasporic People's Writers Collective. And our co-sponsors include City Lights Books, Copper Canyon Press, Noemi Press, University of Pittsburgh Press, and Poetry Flash, the literary review and calendar for the West. I also get to offer a special thanks to the Legacy of Poetry Zoom production and marketing teams who have provided valuable support and assistance behind the scenes, especially Clifton Gold, special events producer in the University Advancement Office, and of course, our festival's executive producer, Professor Alan Soldovsky. Now, I'm pleased to turn your attention to my co-host, Anne Shalick. Anne is poetry editor and copy chief of Read Magazine, issue 154. She's also a talented poet herself. Her work appeared in issue 152 before she joined our staff. She's also published in Catamaran Literary Reader, Gone Long, DMQ Review, and elsewhere. And Anne gets to introduce our first reader. Hi, Anne.
Thank you, Helen. I'm delighted to welcome everyone to Read Magazine's first ever dedicated reading at the Legacy of Poetry Festival. We see this as a wonderful opportunity for us to showcase just a few of the hundreds of poets who have appeared in our print editions. Tonight, we will introduce to you 5 poets whose work features in issues 152, 153, and 154, as well as in our first poetry chapbook, Bone Ink, which will soon be available on our website. Helen and I are here as the representatives of a literary magazine, and printed literature is our stock in trade. But we never forget the value of readings like this. As Jorge Luis Borges said, truly fine poetry must be read aloud. A good poem demands pronunciation. Poetry always remembers that it was an oral art form before it was a written art form. It remembers that it was first song. So let us prepare ourselves for a celebration of poetry as it was meant to be experienced, as a spoken art form. Our first reader tonight is Umi Ali. Umi Ali is a teaching associate and an MFA student here at San Jose State University, where she studies fiction and poetry. Her writing explores immigrant issues, third culture, and displacement. She has served as contributing editor for Aziza magazine and has been nonfiction editor and marketing lead here at Read Magazine. Umi's poems can be found in Aziza and Sejura. I'm also pleased to announce that Umi will be joining the Read staff next year as lead poetry editor. Ladies and gentlemen, Umi Ali.
Everyone, my name is Umi Ali, and I'll be reading my poetry. This first one's called Self-Portrait as a Former ESL Student. What is Urdu but a string of hard consonants, a trick of breath and teeth, I say out loud, knowing Iqbal must be turning in his grave, knowing at any moment my mother will say it's a shame her daughter is so blunt and badtameez, knowing the correct answer is already in my flesh. But my mouth is an open wound, carved by the ones who once corrected my V's and W's, taught me my A, E, and IOUs. I think of these sounds I've adopted, still homeless as they split again and again from my bone and lips, hadi and hont. Sometimes I think it isn't even mine, this mouthpiece, a white flag I didn't plant but still wave. These are my words, it says. But these are not my words if saying them only means something to someone else. Does it matter then how I call myself or who responds? I'm a riddle, I think, and home must be the answer always at the tip of my tongue. I think the air in my lungs bears no allegiance to lines and geography, only to the present, only to the possibility of who I become whenever I speak. Only to the weight of the sound of my name emerging from the walls of my body, my body, my body. If I say it enough, maybe my body will release me from my birth, fill in my blanks with only flesh and fingerprint, and not this hocus pocus, this fantasy, this silly alphabet and syllabary. So this one's called When the Locust Invasion Arrives in Your Town. It begins on a blustery Thursday in October when you notice more flying insects on your front patio than you normally do. You and your younger sisters squeal every time the locusts hop 2 feet, 3 feet into the air, wings clicking about as they rise and land again and again on the checkerboard tiles surrounding you. You make a game of squishing them under the bamboo mat, the chair legs, the bike wheels, your dad's gardening boots, and watch the brown goo spilling out. The next day, they have quadrupled. They must understand the power in numbers, for they are now gregarious, no longer afraid. You find a locust or 3 inside your bag, on your pillow, clinging to your textbook, stuck to the inside of your sister's ruffly skirt. Walking from the front door to the car is a recurring nightmare. The floor is a carpet of locusts, and the sky is always buzzing. You have a panic attack every time your own hair grazes against your cheek. When the locusts at number 44 Valentine Street form a colony and their leader wants to speak with the head of the house, your mother brings tea leaves and a fly swatter to the meeting. They tell her they've been squatting a while and wouldn't like to leave. They tell her to forget the paperwork and to leave the furniture. They tell her this was never her home anyway. When the locusts threaten to eat your mother's houseplants, starting with the peace lily, she plucks the fatter, feistier one and bites into its crunchy integument. When you ask her about it later, she scoffs. It was like biting into a peanut shell. Thank you.
I was muted, which is suitable coming after 2 remarks about the spoken word. Thank you, Umi. That was really fun and vivid. Thank you for reading. As you know, Read Magazine is currently in production for issue 154. Just a few years ago, when we were developing issue 151, the California edition, we were fortunate to have the poet Megan Alfaro as editor on the poetry desk. Megan is the recipient of the James Felon Award for Metrical Poetry, the Ida Faye Sachs Ludwig Memorial Scholarship for Excellence in Poetry and Verse, and the James F. Parker Prize for Poetry. Among other publications, Megan's work has been featured in Read Magazine and in Analecta. She currently lives in Colorado, but we are delighted to have her here with us tonight. Please welcome Megan Alfaro.
Hello, my name is Megan Alfaro, and I would like to read a few poems. The first one is called Collapse of the Modern Republic. I fell in love with a democratic socialist. Our space was functional and spare, with room enough to waltz and a big bed for making many babies, or to simply stretch our extremities to their limits. We get cozy on the sectional. She adjusts her wire-rimmed world, my face in the lenses. She wants accessible education. She wants modernized healthcare. She wants me to take her down south to meet my family, and I will. We listen to Stravinsky in the breakfast nook, Arabica buzz and her sensible manicure, softest pink against a chipped mug. She butters her biscuit with ghee and wipes crumbs into a stiff napkin. Her tweets are praised by the proles. Her riposte to the blather of the elite warm me, a broken-in blazer lined with fleece. We nod with the dip and sputter of Wall Street, the clamor of pigeons perched on the window box, the swipe of cards through squares a low shtuk in the market below. This next poem is called Saint Valentine. With small rounded scissors, I cut Valentine shapes in red and white. I watch my daughter choose pom-poms and pipe cleaners with Elmer's glue peeling on her baby fingers. It is February 7th, and you have been dead for 2 years. I fold the paper and carve out a heart with a window that opens when you flatten it. I show my girl how to adhere the edges to the base sheet without accidentally sealing it shut. My hands are beginning to wrinkle in places. The dry mountain air, I tell myself, but I see you there because you're nowhere else I can touch, nowhere else she can know you. The next poem I would like to read is called Marymore Seawright Municipal Park. You said no one would see, so I sank onto you in the dead leaves, mesquite curling against escarpment oaks, ivy shuddering in the last breaths of September. The river below coursed southward, the surface motionless as the disinterested doe kneeling on the opposite shore. We smoked until resin turned our tongues sour, then slunk down to where the water diverged, shallow streams through veins of granite, sharp beneath a down of algae, the sun a gold coin cutting city haze 15 miles west, where we'd locked our lives in desk drawers for the weekend. It was too hot to eat, so we drank liters of water and voided our bladders into mountain laurel, still in bloom though the season was late, and marveled at the unlikeliness of the paired lavender blossoms as our fluids faded into the dust. The last poem I would like to read is called Remnants, triptych. They came through the waterless sea of dehydrated cedar and scrub brush, whose spread fingers strove skyward in supplication, remembering the sea fronds that lived in this sand when we were all mollusks and diatoms. Yucca yields to slate and adobe, then shanties made of pallets filled with cement or empty ammunition boxes layered with sheet metal and choked with chicken wire. Orange dirt flavors all with arid decay. The fractured skulls of rodents crunch underfoot with the calcified remains of someone's better life. Horse teeth are scattered among rabbit ribs. Dirt devils dash them to flower against the single-wide trailers emerging from the landscape like tumuli. A gaggle of children in sun-faded clothes kick a deflated basketball into the sharpened grit down the unpaved road. Their laughter crumbles to shards. An old man sits shelling nuts with subtle tools, an unlit cigarette dangling from his jowled mouth, his face gnarled, his boots brown and cracked, white hair thick and mole glorious on his nose. He knows and does not know that she is dead, that she isn't just down the hall. We are solicitous strangers who have come to take away her things. The women ask if he wants to eat or a bath or to turn his hearing aids on. He remains in his chair with the worn velvet cushion, sitting sentinel by the storm door with eyes bright and hands busy. Pecans. Where did he find pecans out here where the sun can set your skin to peeling in under 10 minutes? They came in black dress clothes, subdued moods and lowered eyes, shuffling down the carpeted aisle to look at the body. If she were there, she'd be smoking and telling the little ones not to go touching everything. They put her in a dress the color of stones found in Pueblo jewelry, sold from woven blankets on the streets of Santa Fe. Her hair is the wrong shade and her lipstick is smeared, and whose idea was it to get the gold casket? Preposterous. No one says it looks like she's sleeping. Thank God. She hated bullshit. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. That was beautiful and thought-provoking, as always. You know, I really miss her now that she's moved to Colorado. But what I really enjoy about having Poets for Friends is that you can keep in touch just through what they write. And I love how the high mountain imagery is finding its way into her work. It's just beautiful. You can find more of Megan Alfaro's poems in Read issue 152, available on our website, readmag.org. Our next reader tonight is Vinnie Lopez, whose poem Condensation will appear in our forthcoming poetry chapbook. Vinnie Lopez received his Master's of Fine Arts from San Jose State's Creative Writing Department in 2020. He is primarily a poet, but dabbles in fiction. He is currently working as an English and writing teacher at a private school while working on a Central Valley-centered poetry collection entitled Omens Songs. Please welcome Vinnie Lopez.
This poem is entitled New Blues. I don't want to hear the noises on TV anymore. It's all lies streaming in and out of pores, already drowned by war grease. It's all silicone, all mouths making noises about nothing history will cherish. It's all end-of-the-world game shows with red-faced hosts where the winner is the one who screams stomps the hardest when given new questions about lovers and skin color. Don't you know you are not the best? Generations never know they aren't until it's too late to wonder about peace. I don't want to water the poor lily on the windowsill. I want to shrivel like so much of my kin. Droughts are now ours, lumps of clay made of zeros and ones who recall only dividends and stone. With turgid wallets and desert ribcage, we have forgotten what change can look like for the voiceless bulk stuck in traffic. Life is a crazy thing. Good things dance on the horizon. I read that on the worst fortune cookie of the pandemic and thought, no shit. The horizon is that place I've always wanted to be, that free, faraway beam I've always wanted to balance and dance upon. The place where when the sun comes, I'll feel nothing, nothing but warm, murmuring ocean. There's not even a cloud polluting the blue above. Blue below an elephantine window where fish kill and love more fervently than I, where octopuses and nurse sharks lurk, where prismatic schools spasm and flow. The horizon is the place where I can never relapse into dust and rain again. There is a home within the horizon I never had, a home where eyes never lie, where glass doesn't speak or sway closed minds, a home where I can finally dance all night to the rhythm of oceanic blues, then get some rest. There is a world within the horizon, the ultimate free state in our silicon huts, but there's no way to get there without losing your corpse along the way. Life indeed is crazy. Thanks for reminding me, Fortune Cookie. Are we all just more susceptible to sadness now? To the battering waves of ennui? Death has been so whimsical this century. Or is the grime of the various felonies we grieve our mother with just easier to see? It's all me, dying all the time, like the lilies doomed to drought. It's all of us doing nothing with our spines in a world where big dogs don't chew bones. There's something special about us, but no one cares. Everything is just fine. Everything's cool. Just look around, look past bad dream cages and six-period bullets, look past the bulging cemeteries filled with so much air. Everything is just fine. Everything's so damn cool if you just look right past blood beating off the sidewalk, past tuna can prisons, past pestilence and school buses filled with dead-eyed brown kids who only know dust, lead, and their own blood. Look beyond the oil and the moths on fire. Be quiet. Make yourself small. Don't say a word. Break no glass. Heed no sirens. Know your place or don't. Thank you.
And thank you, Vinny. Would like to take a moment after that one, but very much appreciate your hearing your voice here tonight. Thank you so much. And now, Read Magazine is proud to present the first of tonight's premiere recitations. The 2018 and to 2020 Poet Laureate of Santa Cruz County, Danusha Limaris has published 2 volumes of poetry, including last year's Bonfire Opera and 2014's The Moons of August, which was chosen by Naomi Shihab Nye as the winner of the Autumn House Press Poetry Prize. Danusha's poems have appeared in many publications, some of which include Best American Poetry, Orion, the New York Times, the American Poetry Review, the Sun Magazine, Plowshares, Tin House, Prairie Schooner. And in just a few weeks, she'll be adding Read Magazine to that list. Her work has also been included in the anthologies Intimate Kisses, A Bird Black as Sun, California Poets on Crows and Ravens, and In a Fine Frenzy, Poets Respond to Shakespeare. I'm pleased to introduce the 2020 recipient of the Lucille Clifton Legacy Award, poet Danusha Limaris.
Hi, this is Danusha Limaris, and thank you for having me. Thanks to San Jose State and to Read Magazine. And I'm going to read you a poem from my book, Bonfire Opera. A poem that began around a table with poets, talking about how the world tastes good. Edible. We want it all. Potatoes pulled up from under their poison foliage. The artichoke's heart scraped clean. The tender bodies of crustaceans broken from their calcified shells. Saffron stamens plucked from the crocus's center. Bark of cinnamon trees, slow sugar tapped from the maple. The golden vomit of bees pried from its waxen vaults. Even, for some, the delicate crunch of crickets or hind legs of lamb still tinged with blood. The world is such an unexpected feast. I think of my friend Christopher, who, when he found himself dying early one spring, kept telling us how this was the best part, the letting go. As if in his hunger, he'd somehow broken into death's core, torn off the husk, the brittle shell, found inside the succulent heart, and savored it. So that was Edible from Bonfire Opera, and a poem for my friend Chris. Funny how often poems begin, don't they, with stories of people we love, people we knew, people we know. And that's true of this next poem I'm going to read as well, called Hawks. And it's for a little girl I was friends with years ago, and she's no longer a little girl. And it's about something she did. Hawks for Luna. It was late afternoon, and we were standing on the deck overlooking the gray swath of the Pacific when my friend's daughter, then 4, turned to me and pointed at the hawks flying in the distance. I can call them if I want, she said, tilting back her head to let out a long, fierce caw, which floated up over the marsh and above the trees. At first, nothing. Then a slash in the distance. And in the next moment, there it was, nearly above us, wings spread wide, the color of rust, and then another, the two floating in silent circles while she sounded her cries. The primal cry of the human, raw and plain. The call to prayer, the weeping at the wall, the singer's highest, most broken note. Whatever it is, we send up into oblivion waiting. Haven't I too called out? Haven't I beseeched something winged to do my bidding? And here she was calling, and here they came in answer. This hinged assembly hovering toward us on the wind, 10, 20, enough to darken the heavens above where we stood, waited in place, pinned by a cover of raptors, bone swallowers, snake eaters, sharp-sighted angels of prey, their scaled feet clutching the empty sky. True story. I think what happened next is I grabbed her and ran in the house. I don't think a child is supposed to call 20 hawks. It's just too many. Maybe I'll read the title poem next, Bonfire Opera. Also a true story. And for those of you familiar with Santa Cruz, California, it won't surprise you at all that something like this would happen in Santa Cruz. Bonfire Opera. In those days, there was a woman in our circle who was known not only for her beauty, but also for taking off all her clothes and singing opera. And sure enough, as the night wore on, and the stars emerged to stare at their reflections on the sea, and everyone had drunk a little wine, she began to disrobe, loose her great bosom and the tender belly, pale in the moonlight, the Viking hips, and to let her torn raiment fall to the sand as we looked up from the flames. And then a voice lifted into the dark, high and clear as a flock of blackbirds, and everything was very still. The way the congregation quiets when the priest prays over the incense and the smoke wafts up into the rafters. I wanted to be that free inside the body, the doors of pleasure opening one after the next, an arpeggio climbing the ladder of sky. And all the while, she was singing and wading into the water until it rose up to her waist and then lapped at the underside of her breasts. and the aria drifted over us. Her soprano spare and sharp in the night air. And even though I was young, somehow in that moment I heard it, the song inside the song. And I knew then that this was not the hymn of promise, but the body's bright wailing against its limits. A bird caught in a cathedral, the way it tries to escape by throwing itself again and again against the stained glass. So thank you for listening and for joining me for these poems. It's always a pleasure. They're sort of little stories, right? Little snippets of our lives. And I think often that's why we write, is to capture just the smallest moments, because otherwise they get away from us. Some we want to remember and some are painful to remember, but I think we don't want to lose them. And so I'm going to read the next poem called The Boxes, and this is the one published in Read magazine. The Boxes. It's a faint memory now. A hot day in June, a stranger's house on a hill, packing the sheets, the towels, the books, myself and others, no evidence of blood or spilled pills on the rug, no length of rope hanging from the rafters, only the stale dishes left in the sink, cups and plates, and by the door, boots still crusted with dirt. I tried not to look at her, the sister, bereft, her face flushed and blank as she moved about the room, picking things up, putting them back down, tossing them into the boxes on the floor. I kept my eyes downcast, an interloper trespassing among the ruins. And all the while I felt, how to name it, the small, immodest flower of helpfulness bloom in my chest. How could I have known I too would pack away my brother's life in cardboard squares, gather the impossible burden of his shirts, his shoes, the black leather jacket that still smelled of his cologne. I can almost recall one or two, the babysitter, her friend, hovering around as I once did, safe in their periphery, going about the motions without having to enter the story. And worse, feeling better, having done their part to erase him. Though in truth, what would we have done without them? Passing from room to room, busying themselves with purpose, the fragrance of their innocence buffering the air. So that was The Boxes. I think I'll read you Omens next. It's a small poem also from Bonfire Opera, and it takes place out here where I live, which is in a little barn at the foot of the Santa Cruz Mountains. And so a lot of the poems take place here. And here it is. Omens. Out here, we read everything as a sign. The coyote in its scruffed coat, bending to eat a broken persimmon on the ground. The mess of crows that fills the apple tree, makes a racket, lifts off. In between, quiet. The winter fog is a blank. I wish I could make sense of the child's empty bed, the bullet hole through my brother's heart. The mailman drops a package on the front stoop, and the neighbor's dog won't stop barking. I tread down the stairs lightly. Because we can't know what comes next, we say, the plum tree is blooming early. There are buck antlers lying on the grass. A mountain lion left its footprints by the bridge. Thinking maybe all of those things have happened in the past week. The plum tree definitely bloomed early. There's usually some buck antlers lying in the grass somewhere. I don't know about this time of year. And I thought I did see some mountain lion evidence out by the bridge. Again, I never see the actual lions. Everybody else in my neighborhood sees them but me. So I don't know what's up with that. But they're definitely there, living their best lives, hopefully, while we're living ours. All right. Service station. This poem is about an event in my childhood that I could never make any sense of. And I like to think I've made sense of it now that I've written this, but it's something my brother and I would always try to figure out. So what else to do but write a poem about it? Service station. You're beautiful, sister. Eat more fruit, said the attendant every time my mother pulled into the 76 off Ashby Avenue. We never knew why. She didn't ask, and he didn't explain. My brother and I would look at each other sideways in the back seat, eyebrows raised, though Lord knows, we'd lived in Berkeley long enough. He smiled when he said it and wiped the windows and pumped the gas. I liked the little ritual. Always the same order of events, same lack of discussion. Could he sense something? Attuned to an absence of vitamin C? Or was it just a kind of flirting, a way of tossing her an apple, a peach? It's true my mother had a hidden ailment of which she seldom spoke. And true, she never thought herself a beauty, since in those days you had to choose between smart and beautiful. And beauty was not the obvious choice for a skinny, bookish girl, especially in Barbados. No wonder she became devout, forsaking nearly everything but God and science. And later she suffered at the hands of my father, whom she loved, and who'd somehow lost control of his right fist and his conscience. Whose sister was she then? Sister of the early rise, the 5 o'clock commute, the centrifuge, sister of burnt dreams. And didn't her Savior speak in parables? Isn't that the language of the holy? Why wouldn't he come to her like this, with a kind face and dark, grease-smeared arms, to lean over the windshield of her silver Ford sedan and bring tidings of her unclaimed loveliness, as he filled the car with fuel and told her, as a brother, to go ahead, partake of the garden, and eat of it. So that is service station. Mystery solved, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to tell. All right. I'm just skipping around. I never read exactly what I plan to read, so here we go. That poem had me thinking about time and the things that stay locked there that we never figure out, the things we want to hold on to. And of course, one of the biggest ways that comes up is with children and how we want to hold on to certain moments or eras of their lives, and we can't quite. So this is a poem from another book of mine, From the Moons of August. It's just a little poem for my nephew, who's in college now. Time. My nephew still wears a trace of his baby smell. When I pull his gangly body towards me, inhale the scent wafting from his crown, there's just the slightest whiff. I know, he says, when I mention it, twisting back and forth in my arms. Only last year, he stopped lisping his S's. Sometimes, in front of his friends, he pretends not to know us. Love's a record keeper. Baby teeth, first wisps of hair, growth marks inked on the wall. We know we're going to lose everything. Don't we, though? I'm sure parents can relate to that one. That was the year he started getting speech therapy for the not being able to say his R's and other issues. And I think I actually cried when he got speech therapy, which is very embarrassing. I couldn't stand the thought of him losing the lisp and the everything that went with it. But now that he's a young man, I'm sure he's glad that he had that. Okay, I think I'll read you. I'd like to read you one more poem, and this is an obad. And traditionally, an obad is a poem about lovers parting in the morning. So this is called Obad with a Chance of Rain. There is a bed in each of us, a bed of memory, bed of damp grass, of straw, mattress tucked against the wall or spread out under the stars, bed of the beloved, bed of small deaths, the sheets smoothed just so. And all around the world, someone is about to rise from it, to lift a head from the pillow, slip into a robe, duck under the low, arched door. Let there be a faint sun, a cloudy sky. Let the two lovers linger there for the time it takes to write this poem. Let the bed be soft as down, as the milky seeds of dandelions. It is almost, but not quite, time to go. The sky is dark. Let no one they love try to look for them. Let the children, if there are children, sleep. Let the sirens quiet, the guns rest poised in their chambers, the bombing cease. And when the lovers rise, as they must, may the rain fall and soften their return. So thank you so much for being with me and for listening to these poems. And thanks again to San Jose State and Read Magazine for hosting me.
Thank you, Danusha. What a beautiful and powerful reading. I think that my heartbeat slowed down during that reading. It cast a spell. That was amazing. It's the first time I've heard Danusha read, but not the last. Danusha's poem, The Boxes, appears in Read's forthcoming issue 154. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Rodrigo Toscano, our final reader of the evening, who will join us live from New Orleans. Following his reading, we will have time for a brief Q&A. So if questions pop into your mind, you can put them in the chat or save them to ask him directly. Rodrigo Toscano is the author of 10 books of poetry. His latest, The Charm and the Dread, is forthcoming from Fence Books in spring 2021. His poetry has appeared in over 20 anthologies, including Best American Poetry. He works for the Labor Institute around projects involving environmental and labor culture transformation. I'd also like to add that Rodrigo's powerful poem, Gaps, was the winner of Read Magazine's 2020 Edwin Markham Prize for Poetry, selected by poet Brenda Hillman. I highly recommend you pick up a copy of issue 153 so you can read it in full. With no further ado, let's go to Rodrigo Toscano in New Orleans.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for attending. I'm going to be reading from The Charm and the Dread, the upcoming book. The Charm and the Dread. Take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath out. In, out. There is no past. There is no future. There is only now. There is only now. Trees are hilarious. Grass is hilarious. The charm of roots, the charm of clouds, the charm of that faucet that's leaking again. A Dublin accent, how the fuck that get in here? Take a deep breath in, deep breath out. Welcome to China. Floating flowers in air, the crimson yellow of no past, the charcoal pink of no future. Trees don't select flight seats at the time of purchase. Grass doesn't need to know the hotel check-in time. Oceans, 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 oceans. Breathe in, hold your breath, don't let it out, hold your breath, sing New York, New York in your chest, knees clacking together, release your breath. Welcome to Bourbon Street. There is only now. ¿Dónde está la cantina de tequila? Oceans, oceans, oceans. The charm of a medevac helicopter, the dread of a failed meditation. The charm of another ambulance, the dread of a failed meditation. The charm of a virus on your fingertip, the dread of a failed meditation. The charm of a curved graph line, the dread of a failed meditation. Take a deep breath in, deep breath out. Two petals, an emerald white of no past, a lavender orange of no future. There is only now. Blue with a hint of silver. Oceans, oceans. The last puddle on your street, the power of a cat finding it. The last flower of a hibiscus plant, the power of a worm chomping it down. That damn rooster again. The rooster again. The rooster. Rooster. Roo. Stir. Welcome to Antarctica. ¿Adonde está? Breathe in. Icebergs. 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 Nobody. Nobody. Nobody told you to stop breathing. Nobody told you to start breathing. Nobody told you, stop goofing. Nobody told you to stop regarding that leaky faucet. Droplets, one by one, is music. Birds, one by one, is music. The clouds are hamming it up. Your heart is hamming it up. Your lungs are hamming it up. Your belly is hamming it up. Your tongue is hamming it up. Your toes are hilarious. Your toes have always been hilarious. Night sky, stars. Night sky, stars. Night sky, stars. Okay, so this one is called Write the City. What's the point of New York City, or for that matter, Calgary, or any city on a hill, or hidden far beneath the waves? Any city at any time, any city planned or dreamt of? What's the point of males and females? What's the rub with transportation, movement of foodstuffs or the arts, distribution of new pleasures, or the same old ones year by year, making for a steady story? What's the point of stock characters, emotions bundled or spread out, arguments over arguments, escapes from argumentation, fantastical propositions, promises to extend a hand? What's the point of scheduling things all in tandem or in random through avenues, streets, and alleys, secrets secreted forever, or spilled onto morning pavement, draining into holes seaward bound? What's the point of that lingerie, that tie's length and width and color, fraying from overuse or disuse, weighing X amount per square ton, legs, rubber, arms, cotton, eyes, steel? What point in writing the city? It's called Huddle, in memory of pre-COVID soirees. Mix it up, make it count. Delight folks, be delighted. Steer phrases, be steered. In the swirl, roused about. Seek a huddle, spot a huddle, slink in, stick out. Seek gaps, shoot them, spot walls, crash them, step back, make space. Watch huddle, sidebar one, slip a shiny, receive well what rebounds. Pocket insight, pocket wit, move on. In the swirl, seek a huddle, spot a huddle, slink in, say nothing, nod a bit, make it count. Seek a signal, spot a signal, drop a shiny, kick it once, kick it twice, kick it thrice, scoop it up, toss it, receive well what rebounds, step back, make space, watch huddle. Empty pockets, show empty, share empty, fill empty with shinies kicked around from nowhere to somewhere. This one's called The Peopling. The Peopling, and you gotta, this is, I'm sorry, The Peopling, and this is for the Crescent City here in New Orleans, The Peopling. The Peopling, and you gotta love or hate that word of this here, cypress, swamp, river bend, is a long, long, and super short, complicated, very simple, non-story of tales, fantastical, voluminous, adding up to something, while subtractive of itself, about to multiply under the radar, like people's lived lives under this here style of economic and cultural dredged collection of impulses and reflexes and imaginations, and indeed peopling of peoples, peopling, a genuine non-story of tales, fantastical, intermittent, fractal microns of feelings and half thoughts processed, refined and marked up to epic proportions, dimensions, to get lost in, to meet a few flakes lost along the way, showing the way by tales, fantastical luminescence, blown away by raging storms slammed against walls of institutional, administrative ministerings of, you guessed it, a non-story of tales, fantastical, interruptive, blown glass, mint julep, fluted beakers, cracking up, spilling out, a micron's worth of effect on the peopling in process, on boulevards and alleyways, in sturdy, decorative, colorful abodes and flopping makeshift tents under the highway overpass. This next one's called Beach Time. All y'all, Alabama flagger flying, Cajun dinghy rigging, Creole beignet flipping, Texas gravel hauling, Georgia trailer hitching, Mississippi mud dragon. Gentlemen, can we talk? All y'all Emerald Coast revelers, Ruby Coast ragers, Sapphire Coast rompers, Pearl Coast plungers, Onyx Coast splashers, Diamond Coat flapabouters. I mean, catch, toss, kick around a bit. Bent key capitalism, worn key capitalism, broken key capitalism, lost key capitalism, wrong key capitalism, keyless fob dead battery capitalism. Not the right time? I want to agree, but ripples over there, you can see the white caps of a dark purple wave welling up, curling over, sucking in the water's edge of time and space to dream and drift. Brown lives. Brown lives, the phrase as is, don't matter in Mexico. The shades are endless. Where draw the line? You'd go quite mad. What matters in Mexico is lana, cold cash. How much? How far? The flow. What things? What folks you gather around you? Of course, colorism thrives in Mexico, weighs in, tips scales. But saying and insisting brown lives, the phrase as is sacred, is blurry, happy talk. Won't supply the flow, the things, the folks you gather around you. The line, when drawn, would shift yearly, monthly. The haggle would matter to oligarchs a lot. The haggle would matter to academia even more. Brown lives, whole departments might thrive, service lines, blurring oligarchs, long game. Still though, colorism thrives in Mexico. It hurts, it works for some, for sure. Same families have winners and losers. It's important to confront colorism, frankly, but lana, go see, take in, don't flinch, draws lines on top, down, below, both sides, makes box. In Mexico, boxes matter, not lines that shift weekly, daily. You'd go quite mad, demarking where, jumping back, jumping over, vying to drag shit here to there and back, stuck in a box in Mexico, decaled with brown lives matter merch donated by happy oligarchs of oil, of telecom, of finance, beachfront empires, foreground to hillside slums, background to nervous middlings, frozen between, undecided about lines, boxes, which matter in why, earning zeal, spending zeal to audit Mexico lindo is necessary. The peso plunging today, 10%. This next one is called Quitters. Band of about 14 quitters roaming about. Done quit boards and editorial ships. Demanded someone quit, but quit themselves. In this state of quit, 14 roam about, 2 quitting over 2 others having not. And of the 2 now roaming about, one demands the other quit or else. Split on who quit first, the charge being false quit. Meanwhile, band of 12 split over roaming, 6 quit on the spot over 6 not quitting. So now 6 are roaming and 6 are not roaming. The non-roamers split over banding itself. The roam-abouters split over splitting itself. One from each band, call it quits on the fly. They meet, begin roaming, seeking the big join. They meet a stray, former quit leader. They form a roaming band declaring quit forbidden. Former leader sneaks off at midnight, a stray. Stray roams about, feeling a split inside. Half that stray now, seeking the big join. Half that stray now, seeking the big quit. This one's called The Buzz. The moon is probably not quiet, likely has a buzz of its own. We can hear it, and if we could wouldn't understand. Still, it'd be nice to hear from the moon once in a while, add contrast to sun's buzz. And of course, the stars a buzz, which for now might be, who knows, something else's, should we say, music or just buzz. Wasn't that a 70s word, buzz? We forget, was it, what's the buzz, yo? Or buzzing hard are you, mate? Or what's buzzing? That's it. What's buzzing? Well, who the hell, can say most things, individual things, if individual is a thing, kind of don't say shit ever. And what if the moon has been serenading us, jokes on us, lute in hand, feathered hat, or slide steel, badass, crooning till the sun's up and says, what's buzzing, y'all? While we say, what's buzzing, y'all? Socialist war plan. She was sorta in school, sorta living at home, sorta making money, sorta dating, sorta scribbling things. One day, she declared herself a general. The campaign required a van, a Gulf Coast interstate, $1,000 a month, every month, a bundle of 20 books, 2 of them notebooks, a slew of talkative strangers, serene moonlight, rye whiskey. Betimes, a rhapsody for activists. Betimes you stall, and by stalling, rocket. Betimes you're a dead bored worker. Betimes a devoted worker without deep purpose. Betimes you're a thrill-seeking slacker. Betimes a genius co-worker without peers. You chose this. You chose dialectical wreck, sensational. You pounce towards direct, intense unknown. You've sloughed off crooked dick nationalism. You've blown up indolence, on some occasions eloquence. Who can Velcro on a plasticized red wig when you want it? Who can supply you a bronze lion, future beast of victory? Betimes you're a pre-pounce poet, posing as pouncer. Betimes you're a post-pounce, as twitchy twitch. Not whatever, never whatever, but this. You're a spectral socialist, savage. You're a spectral socialist, civilizer. You're a spectral socialist, dirt clod on diamond. Who can futurize the people without the trademark? Who enacts fire canister hierarchical reform? Betimes you carouse, and by carousing, arouse. Betimes you're a hella, as y'all say, cat with hiss and claws. Betimes you're a devotee to love slamming you to the ground. Did you really choose this gem? Art thou chosen? Are you ascending now towards free-floating domes in the sky? Have you handily sloughed off sultry stance nationalism? Betimes, nationalism offer services left or right. Betimes, intra-nationalism show a way out for a fee. Who can hyperspatialize the people without coordinates? Who enacts supersymmetrical justice reform? You're a spectral socialist, bit actor. You're a spectral socialist, stunt double. You're a spectral socialist, diamond fleck on demon dung. Betimes you rocket, and by rocketing, stall. Betimes you stall, and by stalling, rocket. Here's two sonnets from the collection. These are true sonnets too, I'm sorry to have to say. Syllabized, but no rhyme. Insurrectionary. The day-to-day existence of people, if that doesn't change, then what is all this? These protests, these stances, rage, pieties, passionate words, eloquent poetry. What's the use of any of it today if tomorrow and many days to come aren't shaped differently, aren't lived differently? Which calls the question, what do people want? What do they want? Not just what they don't want. Let's list it. Let's study the list closely. And before these items are pinned to life, let's have that conversation. What is life? What kinds of life forms are we, all of us? And what's best for each and everyone here? It's another sonnet called Flesh. It's imperative we keep flesh intact. We don't want perforations, abrasions, or undue irritations marring it. We also want to guard coloration of whatever hue hones to its nature. The smallest capillaries must breathe free. When a breeze fans it, we love the perk up. When flesh grazes it, we love the perk up, the heat or cold of curiosity. It's imperative we keep flesh intact. Painters, if they ever make the comeback, might plumb flesh, flush out commonality. Poets, if they ever make the comeback, might suture flesh, restore integrity. This next one is called The Revolution. Gray birds made of marble falling from the sky. Swamp oaks taking 2 steps forward if you look closely. Levee water levels rising exactly by 4 feet. New bridges made of glass suddenly appear over urban canals. Storefront signages swapping places, making sense. Picnics 2 feet below sea level in the thousands. Girls with brown eyes rolling boulders into pyramids of gold. Girls with blue eyes casting steel hooks onto silver gates. Girls with green eyes forming a field of grass to skip on. Red, chromed out chopper cruising the streets, no rider. Purple sun painting 12 windows onto local birthing center. Hell, the word, the concept, scaring no children at this hour. Heaven, the word, the concept, wood cube and dank attic, rotting. 2-minute clip of brawny man battling an alligator in loop mode. 1-minute clip of young boy twirling brawny man in loop mode. Sundown, western breeze fanning ice tower evaporations. Blank stare of a statue on an iron barge seaward bound. Bats across a full moon, portrait in a trash bin, flaming. Canoe made of pure sugar gliding over asphalt streets at midnight. 30-second clip of diamond tooth baby in loop mode. Bayou bugs onto 4th generation since yesterday morning. Yellow birds made of polyurethane come to a consensus. 15-second clip of upside down city skyline. Justice, the word, the vision in an orange cloud, distending, glowing. 7.5-second clip of pencil frolicking on white paper. 400-foot mound of multicolored masks and panties toppling. Deceased couple with brass canes crossing glass bridge at dawn. Traffic barricades napping again, if you take a glance. This next one is called Männerbunde, which is German for men's club, which is exclusively men's club. These these formations were sort of elemental, you might say proto structures to the National Socialists in the 30s in Germany, but also obviously men's only kind of situations. Well, let's listen to the poem and see what it says. Männerbunde. Guns, shedfuls of them, you'll see, will not be the deciding factor in the big shift towards hemispheric autarky. No amount of rounds and clips hoarded in safes will rewrite labor laws that integrate Canadian, American, and Mexico biopower around a vision of itself, protective economically, expansive culturally. Interpose maps of watersheds, routes of produce, conduits of clean energy, lasered in on healthy work and stable housing. The big shift doesn't require belly-crawling sharpshooters, grown boy camps, manor bunda, sing-alongs pining after dreams of becoming sovereign when all's entangled already, except not formally and equitably set to a higher order, resource conscious, confident future, commandeering hemispheres, collective wealth, material and psychic, brave projection, bulwark against this anarcho-tyranny, faux nationalism, yacht excursion for winners of rigged outcomes, swamp monsters becoming great again, promoting shedfuls of ammo, camo, grown-up boy, lingerie, boudoir, manor bunda, posing on towering trucks, performing sovereign when all's entangled already, but on a wobbly base with sideshows, gun shows, crouching, cowering, last gaps of sovereign kings, every man a serf, owning nothing, not mineral deposit, not beds of technology, not downstream planning, educational cargo, material and psychic, oblivious to rising forces, integrated, autarkic, prosperous homelands to thrive in, where crotch grasping, gun-toting, enfeebled copes flicker out year by year as hemispheric power looks outward with straight backs towards other autarkic regions, working on integration of a higher order, looking outwards, mindfully negotiating globes, collective wealth, material and psychic. And yeah, a few museums of nation states and even kinky cosplay might be entertaining on occasion to remind us of the age of anarcho-tyranny and its camo, lingerie, butlers on a leash, manor bunda. This one's called Jumpstart Poems. I wonder too if jumpstart poems are worth it. I mean, poems meant to get at existential being itself for a moment, brief moment, stripped of social causality, not having to take a publicly recognizable position, not having to, massage an affiliation, but instead riffing on what's elementally human, what's fundamentally common between folks, instead of about folks as proclaimed by folks. Jumpstart poetry that pivots around a few key words, words that for the moment, brief moment, hold the mystery, the puzzle of being in time on this planet, or not even being on this planet, but wanting to. I wonder if jumpstart poems are a cop-out, or a necessary moment, brief moment against cop-out, or maybe something in between, stuck, broken. I wonder if folks are almost always in between, coping, not coping, coping, not coping, but play it like they're one or the other, certain. I wonder if jumpstart poems even exist, and if they don't, whether they should exist. Poems that pivot around certain words, words like being, folks, mystery, pivot. And if they do exist, whether they wonder themselves about poems that wonder about not wondering, fending off the hounds of lassitude, indolence, and surrender. Just long enough for a jump poem to start it all. Orphan poem. This poem is a poem without a project. Like those dreams of you naked in public, where to hide, where's my underwear, can they see me? This poem is a poem without a sponsor, like a refugee we gawk at on television. How far the shore, where the patrols, when the rescue? This poem is a poem without an identity, like a stray along a fence line before a storm. When's the next meal? When's the next nap? Is that a friend or a foe? Okay, this one here is called Zoom Reader, and I got you all on gallery view here, so it's apropos. Zoom Reader. Square one, if you insist on knowing, has fuck squares 3, 6, and 14. Square 2, not too hard to imagine, also fuck square 3, plus 5, and 9. Square 8, according to square 13, will soon be fucking square 5. Square 4, who could have guessed it? Took a hard pass on fucking square 1. Square 5, we somehow know, fuck square 11 and 12 at once. Square 6, when factoring out the variables, has fuck no square. But beware. Square 7, you cannot not tell us hasn't fucked square 2. Square 8, blacked out, and to it again, is fucking square 10, blacked out. Square 9, everybody knows, is bent on fucking square 4 after 3. Square 10, we can extrapolate, would unfuck square 13, if possible. Square 11, according to the algorithm, might well fuck square 6, and soon. Square 12, in speaker mode, drops a hint it fucks square 7, on mute. Square 13, the host just won't tell if square 5 might fuck me. Oh well. Square 14, we've come to a consensus, has been fucking itself. Poker face. That was a Zoom reader. All right, so just a few more here. Clouds and us. Can't believe clouds are on center stage again. Bluviations, how clouds shape up and stretch, make faces, puff up, darken, and pee softly or raucously. Friggin' clouds, meaning everything to hungry ancients of 5 minutes ago. Mixed chalk with oil twirling brushes, making clouds talk, sock puppets for dreams and hopes of healthy clouds, as if sick ones could even be. Here's a set of 4, okay, now 3, make that 5 clouds. We can agree are non-numerical. Neither the Dow Jones nor S&P 500 tracks them, trades them. Nobody squawks about breakdown of cloud families, nor about clouds going back to school. We can all agree no jobs for clouds, unconscious drifters. Wordsworth wrote, I wandered lonely as a cloud. Well, that's closing in on the matter, the will to flee, but not quite like I floundered antsy as a socialist geek, putting clouds on center stage for future ancients to riff off. Same mists, descending to nowhere, meaning everything from drinking to cooking to bathing to bottling. Okay, guess clouds are tracked and traded, somewhat like human labor accrues steadily, hinting that some kind of cross-entity solidarity arises between clouds and us, demanding tribute in ritual like the scary gods of yore. July 4th, 2020. 2 words per line. Quite skimpy, but plenty for nation to summon half-inflated rubber raft collecting dust under house. Sparkling bayou, stone's throw, invites revelry to come, float about, meander again, minute moments ahead demand, fetch raft, find pump. Can do, ice chest, can do, beer cans, can do, skeeter, spray, might can, well do, fireworks launch, COVID, forgot. 2 words per line, creep slow to flow with gators down below, other realms grinding on crack can, cheers, ahoy. Can do, chipper talk, can do, nation pause, can do, play today if moved to drag dusty raft to shore. Sparkling bayou, raining cinders, flaming sky, infections high, raft adrift amid rafts, adrift amid rowing dreams, wake to crackling hiss. And the last poem I'm going to read is called Inglisk. Done with you for the time being. Bayou's ducks in Creole French, back and forth in Castilian, laid off cooks in Tagalog, at water's edge in Celtic, stifling humidity in Vietnamese, stifling prospects in German. Construction continues in Mandarin, ducks paddling by in Neapolitan, back and forth in Nigerian, minimal ambulance howl in Greek, Porsche flies by in Punjabi, homeless placard flaps in Romanian, back and forth in Bantu, teens in jeeps in Persian, picnickers gather in Hebrew, ducks bobbing in Malaysia, invisible 4G pulse in Norwegian, 3 F-15s streaking in Korean, back and forth in Somali, reeds random swaying in Arabic, ducks take flight in Russian, beer cans snapping in Chirimacha, dark clouds gathering in Homa, bayou clearing in Choctaw. Thanks.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Well, that's an act that I don't want to have to follow. So fortunately for everyone, I'm not going to recite any poetry of my own, but that is a lot of really beautiful, dense poignancy in such efficient language. That's the magic of poetry to me. And I think, Anne, you were saying, we were talking before the show about how you, Rodrigo, you managed to really capture the vernacular in your poetry and bring it to life. And you were saying before the show how, well, actually during the show, about how having poetry be recited and actually hearing it read aloud makes such a different impact. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit more.
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah, go ahead, Anne.
oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say,
No, just go ahead. Yeah, Anne.
Especially in work like Rodrigo's, where the voices, yeah, they're so prismatic, and his poetry so energetic. It's like, it's almost as if you collect the voices and the idioms of the American vernacular and you repurpose it, you riff off of it. And I find that fascinating. For instance, I was listening to Quitters, and it sounded like you were using terms borrowed from sort of political movements or schisms in a church, and sort of repurposing it in this new, for this new purpose. And I love how your poems bring us in with the language and then take us somewhere completely unexpected. Yeah.
I forgot the Helen, the sort of question that you, but that was a great embellishment of that question. But what was the sort of pith of the question?
Well, your ability to consistently put the vernacular into a more sort of dramatic, like highlight of a heightened sensibility.
Well,
and I think I get a much better sense of that hearing you read rather than reading your work, and it's a real pleasure. I'll just sneak that. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, I mean,
have you read it to us.
I make a big distinction between sort of writing scores, of sort of words and meaning, and I do think of them as sort of in a sort of musical sense, compositions, and then they're done, and then as I pick up the page and I'm going to sort of represent that score to somebody, then at that point I have to turn into the instrumentalist. And that's what I you know, some people say, well, you know, he's this performance part. You know, I honestly don't look at myself. When some people say he's a performer, it kind of just, ugh. Because all I'm doing is rendering to the best of my ability, you know, what's in that score, what potentialities I set up in the music and the, you know, the meaning making that I set out to do, or fell into midway and thought I was doing. So that's it. It's no more than that. It's like when a pianist sits down full disclosure, I do play piano, so
Aha.
yeah. So there's a responsibility to interpret a piece by somebody. You know, if I'm playing Monk or I'm playing Bach or something like that, you know, I have to have a take on it. There's no preset. There's no one way to do it. It's, you know, you got to do it. So that's how I look at things in a way.
Thank you. Well, I want to just mention to everyone here that we have lots of time for questions. And it looks like two of our poets are here tonight. Rodrigo's here and Umi is still here. And I want to invite you to go ahead if you want to write a question in the chat, or you can just raise your hand or use the hand raise function, which you'll find on the reactions button. You can raise your hand and ask your question directly. And we do have one here that asks, your work is often inspired by the vocabulary, the rhythms, and the idioms of the speech that ordinary Americans deploy in their everyday lives. This is much like what we were talking about a moment ago. How is this aspect of your writing affected by the last year of lockdown?
In terms of this sort of like, you know, it's funny because and you made mention of this too, about how sort of like my rolling with the demotic, you know, the vernacular, whatever. And I look at, you know, what I do is, you know, I classicize, you know, like I take you know, what would be like something as simple as you like that, huh? Or whatever. And to me, it doesn't appear like speech. They're just fragments of meaning that have a particular, you know, morphemic sound. And so, you know, to me, they're universal. Sort of, you know, everybody as an instrumentalist can say that. I'm not trying to sort of brand or template, like, you know, what they call a voice in American poetics, you know. I'm not, it has, you know, there's peculiarities in the way that I read it, because there's, you know, sets of criteria that I work with in terms of, you know, reading and, you know, listening to the concept. You know, when I've done the few workshops that people invited me to teach, the only thing I really want to say to young students is, like, you know, pay attention to the consonants, and then after that, you know, pay attention to the vowels, and don't run past it. Don't run past it to get to your attitude or whatever. Stay on the sled, you know, feel the bumps, feel the swoosh. Okay. That's kind of how I look at things in a way. So there is a sort of tactility and that attracts me to the word arts. And
That answer makes me want to hear Umi's first poem again, actually. Maybe we'll have time for that.
I didn't. I wanted to sort of. I'm sorry. Like, if I can just say, there was an actual question that I just kind of rolled over, and this before the one that Carmen just put up there. I think there was someone before that about how COVID has affected my understanding of speech forms and the like. Well, you know, I wrote that book, all of the work that you heard there, in the summer of 2020, in a span of 36 days. There was more to it, but you know, to answer your question very directly, I was just very, very hungry to, to commune and to commune with people and to say and to to feel something and then to say something. And so that's how it affected me. I don't, it's like when the pandemic began, I thought, well, shoot, that's the end of that. And I thought everything seemed like 1,000 years old, that what I'd written, I couldn't imagine, what the future or the past. So, but somewhere in the middle of the summer, with especially with the conjoinment of the thing around the George Floyd moment and the pandemic and how those sort of like wove into sort of a bigger, as things were getting really gnarly, sort of I just had to say something, and I had to say something, not just to my imagined detractor, but I had to say something to sort of my closest sort of comrades, you might say, and be critical but supportive. I think that a lot of people write, political poetry that's just sort of like a monographic, like just click your fingers and like, it's we're with it, that's not how you build a strong coalition. Is built on contradiction and critique of your own stuff. And so I always try to make a point of sort of divulging aspects of that and of my own political thought. So, but there's another question here. How much does travel inspire your composition, especially in this time when you can't? Because I heard a lot of geographic. Oh, yeah, Carmen, really good question. Well, I mean, you can see, right, being boxed in, like maximally, right, like sitting at the edge of a bayou in your house. Here we have good weather, so we can do that. But like, yeah, I mean, I wanted to expand beyond the box, very roughly so. And you can see in some of those poems, I'm talking about these ideas of, the grand Americas, we should get shit together hemispherically, right? That's how we'll face, I'm trying to jump out of nation, jump out of town. And at the same time, sort of really be here. I've been having this conversation with Fred Moten about this, about the blues in Louisiana and sort of fundamental aspects of Black diasporic art. And one of the sort of contradictions that we sort of picked up on was the sort of tension between, really being here and really wanted to get a move on. There's a lot of songs that want to get a move on, let's get at it. And there's a lot of songs about kind of really being there. And I think that tension was really heightened down here for me, that kind of, that kind of feeling, and being surrounded by, New Orleans culture, so you can hardly move it away, so it had a great influence on me, actually.
I see. I've received another question here. Alan Soldowski, did you want to ask your question, Alan? Or you want me to go ahead and read what you've written here?
I'll ask it. I'm really interested in how you work with the idea of a score and how you deal with lineation. And do you work on the poem orally first, or do you adjust when you revise? Do you listen to the reading of it and hear the notes that it makes and make changes? Do you change anything after you've read it a few times and maybe add it in a journal or
okay, well, I'll answer. Give me just a little part. What is your name?
I'm Alan Soldowski. I'm director.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna jump right to what you just asked me, but I do want to sort of address Ume. Is it Ume? Ume's question in the chat box there.
Hi, it's Umi.
Oh, hi, Umi. Sorry. Okay, so as an acclaimed poet, live with 10 books, would you advise, what would you advise? Anything you'd advise? Yes, I would advise, I would advise to turn on the bullshit detector as high as you can when you start off in this racket. And every move you make after the good move that you make, every kind of groove move that you make, then sort of apprehend like what is, by busting a move in one way, full on, you're necessarily, not doing other things. So look at your work as sort of in the negative. By doing this, what's the trade-off? By doing this other move, what's the trade-off? Can you do both moves in the same poem? Can you add a third voice to that and make any kind of sensible music like that? That's what I would say. Pay attention to those motions and forget all the chitter chatter and sagely advice. So just think about it as moves and counter moves. And so that's what I would say. So, but jumping to the other question, I'm sorry, who was the other fellow who?
Alan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Alan.
question from Alan.
So no. So I'll tell you honestly how I write it. I write it. I just write it by pencil, and I mean, I can kind of hear. I can hear the phrase. I can hear how it would sound. I mean, I've read it, aloud enough, and I've spoken my whole life like you have, and you know exactly how things sound for you, right? So I just score them, and then I, and then when somebody asks me to do a reading, then I pick up the page and I go for it, and that's it. Some people ask me, do you rehearse? And the hell no. That's the worst thing you can do, honestly, because let me tell you something. If you yourself are not surprised by the next line, then how the hell are you going to get anybody else to be surprised themselves? Okay. So that's very important for me, and to not read things out loud to sort of pre-charge something. It's like, for me, I mean, there's other traditions, there's other ways of doing it. Those I full respect, but for me, that's how I roll. So
Do you find yourself though, after you've read something, making a change in it for the next time?
Okay, so it's like this. So there's kind of, when you're reading, there's kind of, okay, there's laying back, right, on the phrase in terms of aggressivity. And then there's leaning forward in terms of like, so it's like, you might say like almost like it's like receptive and all right. So there's that kind of motion, and every occasion sort of is going to sort of put you in a situation where you're going to feel it like different. Should I kind of move in? Should I move out? Not just with the pieces you're reading, but with the actual phrasing. And it's really based on how you're feeling and kind of what you're seeing as a crowd, and the day of the year it is, and what's going on politically around you. And then you figure out what that somatic zone that you want to be in, and then go from there.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Good luck.
There's another question here, Rodrigo.
Okay.
The questioner asks, I've noticed that there are a lot of sonnets in your new book, and you of course shared a couple with us tonight. And that is a bit of a departure from your recent work. What drew you to the sonnet in your latest work?
Of the work that you heard tonight, probably 75% of it is in syllabics, they're different counts, 8s, 8 7s, patterns. I mean, I'm very, I spent a lot of time when I was young, studying sonnets and classical literature, and and I'd memorized John Donne's Holy Sonnets by memory, and others, Milton's as well. So I'm very, very sort of, again, tactily sort of aware of these forms. So when it came down, look, when in the summer things are going really crazy, right? It's just like so much stuff going, like left and right, whatever. A sonnet, you know, it kind of appealed to me as a sort of momentary way to pool an energy and not be in the crowd, because I'd be back in the crowd again. So maybe when you step back and become more contemplative, you want to write something, you know, a little classical. It's like putting on a different outfit. You don't always wear the same outfit with everybody, right? So that's why I did the sonnets. Contrast.
Yeah. Well, it really,
Contrast is
it was
important.
notable, especially to hear it out loud, the departure from the poems you had been reading, and then to hear those sonnets. It really was.
There's 18 sonnets in the new book, a full
Wow.
completely, yeah. Like and honestly, they came, you know, as I was writing them, maybe by the fourth line, you know, like I could already feel like the turn at the end. I could already feel like how much real estate I had to work. And it was really interesting to sort of get to know that, you know. It's almost like, okay, you're dancing to the song, and you kind of, when you kind of can feel it when it's going to sort of like dip and end, you know. So it's very interesting. And so it was more of an art of like just patience. And so I really like that, you know. And you can see some of the other poems are very impatient, right? They're like interruptive and like, and so yeah. So those are just aspects of everybody's got these tendencies, right? And so just play with those and but give it all, you know, as what I would say. So.
Well, it's very fun to hear that sort of punctuate some of the other rhythms that you had going. Looks like we get a question from Sasha Wallace. Go ahead, Sasha, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, so I really appreciated your poems, and I noticed that you're really in the present moment. And I'm wondering if you're a Buddhist, if you're a meditator, if you've read Eckhart Tolle, because you're just like a really present person, and where you get your inspiration from.
Generally speaking, the presence, you know, the attention to the now, whatever, it was instilled in me from two directions, and probably is innate to my ability. But like, you know, when I was young, I was a very you know, very much into martial arts and you know, competed you know, nationally, you know. As a teen, I was, you know, touring and so I in competitions in form and in combat as well. So I, you know, I have that, and then piano from an early age as well, you know. So I have this good precedent for being in the moment, right? But you know, the meditation poem that I read at the beginning, you know, that came out of I work sort of with governmental institutions and state agencies and things along these lines. And you know, some of these kooky people, you wouldn't believe, they do these kind of meditative kind of things, you know, like you know, like staying at the end of the calls, right? Like everybody, and they literally begin like there is no past, there is no, you know, and you kind of you're supposed to trip out on that. And I just found them so damn corny. And I thought, you know what, like poetry's got one on you, and you just don't like watch. So that's kind of why I did that. And I sort of introduced, you know, other elements and was able to, I think, stretch it out, the meditation, but using its core principles. So it's not like that I'm, you know, dogging on meditation. It's just that it just struck me as silly on these governmental calls. And so that's why I did that poem anyway. So just,
Am I quoting you directly? There is only now.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a stereotypical, right? So when somebody says that there is only now, I mean, I don't know what you all think, but like, you know, it's like there is only now. It's like now, when? I don't know. It's like it's like it's just it's rhetoric, you know. And much of poetry to me just strikes me as just rhetoric. It's hard to jump out of it. Like even what do you say? Like, you know, but you do one sentence, and by the time you get that second sentence, you know, you're in a rhetorical situation. So getting on top of that early, in terms of apprehending that, you know, might help you to sort of, you know, kind of jump out of it in some way or other. It's the way I look at it.
I want to see if there may be some other questions that you're being shy to ask anybody. You can certainly put them in the chat if you don't want to ask directly, but we still have time tonight. Well, I think that we will just hear a few words. Rodrigo, thank you so very much for your enthusiasm and for reading live tonight. It's very exciting. And thank you, Umi, for your poetry to start us off. I want to thank Anne Shalick for joining me here hosting. And want to right now turn the mic over to the executive producer of Legacy of Poetry, Alan Soldowski. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you so much for all you've done, Helen and Anne. It was a really wonderful evening. Thank you all for attending this evening's Read Magazine reading with Umi Ali, Megan Alfaro, Vinny Lopez, Danusha Lamaris, and live with Rodrigo Toscano. And now we know he's in the now. The San Jose State Legacy of Poetry Festival, Closing the Distance, Sheltering in Technologies, is presented by the Poets and Writers Coalition of San Jose State University in association with Associated Students, also by the Department of English and Comparative Literature and the School of Journalism and Mass Communications here at San Jose State. Also by Read Magazine, the oldest literary publication in California, and by Poetry Center San Jose with funding assistance from Poets and Writers, Inc. The week of SJSU Legacy of Poetry Festival events are also made possible with the support of the Diasporic Peoples Writers Collective, Poetry Flash, Literary View and Calendar for the West, and other co-sponsors that you see on your screen. Please join us again one more time tomorrow, Friday, April 23rd at 5 p.m. for a YouTube premiere of local poets' poetry performance videos presented by Poetry Center San Jose. You can still upload a poetry performance video of your own to the festival's YouTube channel by going to the URL you see now on your screen, in which we're dropping into the chat. To learn more about the San Jose State Legacy of Poetry Festival and its events, click on the URL, which we're now putting back on the screen, go.sjsu.edu/Legacy of Poetry 2021. And we dropped that into the chat. So thanks, everybody. This is Alan Soldowski, wishing everyone a great evening.